Vince Allen Tawney, and born in Hanover, Pennsylvania, January 30th, 1963.
And what brought you to Carroll County?
That's where we were. It's where my whole family lived.
So shortly after you were born?
Right after. I never lived in Pennsylvania at all.
Okay, great. And do you remember what your neighborhood looked like when you were growing up in Carroll County?
Yeah, we lived on 140.
Whereabouts?
We always said we were right down from Maryland Police, Maryland State Police Barracks.
Okay.
But yeah, the house is still there.
What was the address? Do you remember?
Back then we had a box number.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the box number was. My sisters would know.
And it was was the box at the post office?
No, we had it. Our mailbox was right on 140.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I would want to say I think it was 1331.
Okay.
1331 Baltimore Boulevard. After they got rid of the box numbers,
Okay.
But I'm not positive on that. That's a long time ago.
And the house is still there?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about what was a typical day like in Carroll County when you were growing up?
Well, just fun. I mean, I guess it all depends on your neighbors that you have, and everybody in my neighborhood was good.
Where'd you go to school?
Well, back then we had a whole bunch. I was probably in 5 or 6 different schools before I got to high school.
It's doing its own thing. And did you go to high school in Westminster?
Mm-hmm.
Westminster High?
Westminster High.
Okay. What do you remember about your neighbors where you were growing up there?
Just good people. Just good people, and right where I lived at, I wasn't really, nobody was related, nothing like down here.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. I'm doing their bit first, and I'm going to do my bit. Do you remember what your father did?
He was a milkman.
He was a milkman for what company? Do you remember?
Koontz.
Koontz? That's great. And so he drove a little truck?
Drove a little truck, house to house.
Wow. Do you remember your first job in Carroll County?
Yep.
What was it?
Carried chickens.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What does that mean, carry chickens?
We would take chickens from one house, put them on a big tractor trailers, and take them to another house. And that's all we did until they got bigger. And then the last place that we ever took them was from West Virginia. And then they would be put on a truck, and they went to Campbell Soup.
Campbell Soup?
Yep. All the chickens that we handled was all Campbell's. Campbell's owned all the chickens.
And where was Campbell Soup?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Have no idea. We just put them on tractor trailers, and they were gone.
Oh, my gosh. Were they alive or dead?
All alive.
All alive.
Yep.
Okay. And do you remember what you used to do for fun as a kid?
I guess a whole bunch of things, but I played drums.
You played drums?
Yeah, I played drums. Love music, still do. But I guess that was my biggest obsession, was playing drums, because I had plenty of drum sets.
Did you?
Still have them today.
Did you play in a band?
Yep. Played in a band. Never really got it fully started, or we had it started, never finished it. We just played around.
And when did you start playing drums? Do you remember how old you were when you
No,
first
probably 5 or 6, probably.
And can you remember anything about where you went to school? Is it any different today, do you think, than when you went before? Do you think the school is very different? It's pretty much the same buildings, right?
No, because the first school that I ever went to was, it was called East End School, and it's right in downtown Westminster. Mm-hmm. And now it's became Westminster Inn, the restaurant, stuff like that.
Right.
It's other office buildings in it. But back then you went to a school, like I went to that school for 2 years, but that's all the higher that school went. And then you went to another school, and you went there for 2 years, and then you would go to another school for 2 years. And that's actually how I went through school. And my main middle school that I went to used to be Westminster High. Once they built Westminster High School, they didn't close the old high school. They made it a middle school.
Oh, I see. They just swapped them out.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember where did your family go to shop for groceries?
The only one that I really, there's two of them that I remember. One of them used to be called a co-op, and that was up in Westminster. And once 140 was built, I guess the very first store there was Pranchy Pride. And other than that, I don't, I remember those two grocery stores, but
And they're gone now.
both of them are still there, but they've all changed names. Like
Oh.
one of them's a Food Line, and the other one's Martin's, I think, or Shoppers. Shoppers. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember going into Westminster, what it was like? Has it changed much from what it was like when you were a kid?
The town itself, no, hasn't really changed. Couple businesses that were in there, like your main stores, had closed because then 140 had grown up, and then there's 140 Village and stuff like that. But downtown Westminster really hasn't changed at all.
Okay. And when you were growing up, what was your favorite place to go in Carroll County?
Probably Westminster Playground, because anything we had. It was when we were growing up. If we went to Westminster Playground, that was it.
Where is that? Where is that located?
It's I guess right there by City Hall.
Oh, okay.
It's still there.
Okay, and
Go.
did you get married in Carroll County?
Yep,
Yes, and where
Yep.
were you?
Uh,
Where did you get married?
right here, right up on top of the hill.
In a little church at
Yep.
was it Patapsco Methodist?
Yep,
Okay. Do you remember anything about your wedding day?
hot. It was
hot?
it was hot. It was brutal. Just brutal hot. Because you can look at the wedding pictures. Everybody was sweating, and it was hot.
So it was in the summer.
Yeah.
And do you remember? So did your family go to church up there? Is that how you got married
Nope.
up there?
No, Sandy did.
Sandy did. Okay. All right. And what do you miss most about Carroll County as it used to be?
Probably really nothing. It's Carroll County hasn't really changed that much. Population has changed, but everything that basically was then is still now.
Pretty much the same. Okay. And if you were to describe what is the best thing about Carroll County to someone who's never visited here, what would you say?
People.
People.
Yep, the people in Carroll County have always been good. The county's never ever been like cityized or anything like that. It's how you see it today is the way it pretty much always was. It's a little bit more people here, but like I said, the county itself it's always taken care of itself.
Right.
I guess best way to put it.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about your life in Patapsco.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to tell me what brought you to Patapsco.
My aunt and my uncle, they moved here, and I was little. I was probably 8, 9, something like that. And so the only reason, I guess my parents brought us down here, to help them move in or whatever. I don't really remember, but that's the first time I ever knew of Patapsco.
And what were their names and where did they live?
They lived right up on top of the hill, and their last names were the Cooks, and that's whatever. To me, they were just Aunt Dorothy and Uncle George.
Up on Ridge Road.
Yep, right up on Ridge Road, and that's where they didn't buy it; they just rented it.
Okay. And so you started coming down here when you were 8.
Somewhere in there.
And can you remember your first memories of coming down here? What do you remember? What's your most vivid memory about when you first started coming down here?
Well, I guess it would be my wife. I mean,
Can you tell us about that?
yeah. Well, we met, and
And you were 8 and 9 or something like that?
yeah, and she was well, she became friends with my cousin, and I guess that's how I got to know her.
And what's
And
your wife's maiden name? What was her name? Tell me her
McCormick.
full name.
Her last name was McCormick,
First name.
and Sandy. First name Sandy. I mean, I guess, when I first came down here, that would have to be, I guess, my only really memory that I have. Yeah, I met her, and the history just says itself. I mean, I guess I like the town.
Where did Sandy live?
Up on Ridge Road too.
Okay.
She lived in a farm. So.
All right. And then, so how long was it after you and Sandy met at the age of 8 and 9 that you all got married? How old were you when you got married? Is all we really heard.
I was, well, we dated on and off and all that kind of stuff, how normal people do. When we got married, I was 17, she was 16.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then where did you live when you got married?
The old post office in Patapsco.
With the whistle stop.
Yeah, no, the post office was right up from the whistle stop, and
which building was that?
right beside that old building down there, where it's apartment at right now, right beside that church, where the old church is at.
Right.
The next door, that was where the post office was at.
Oh.
And
so what's now Janice Davidson's house?
Yeah, and then they bought it and made an apartment out of it. Once they made it an apartment, well, the post office moved down to the store.
Okay.
So, but no, that's the first place I lived right after we got married.
Right. And what was your first job? Was it the carrying chickens?
Yeah, first job was carrying the chickens.
Okay, all right. Now tell me a little bit about Patapsco and some of the things that you remember, because you have quite a history here. Anything you want to talk about?
Oh, it was just great. I mean,
what was so great? What was great about it?
Well, the atmosphere, the train. I mean, the train ran when I first came around. And I remember, when you'd be up on the hill, you hear the train. That was the biggest attraction. I mean, everybody, you would run to the top of the hill just to see the train, because it was fascinating. I mean, you never seen one before, and then to see that, and I guess that was all the beginning of, why I really, really liked this place. I mean, it was in the country. And everybody knew everybody. I mean, at that time, I didn't know everybody, but it was full of kids. And, I'm 8 or 9, and the whole town was filled with 8 or 9-year-olds. And everybody got along. I mean, your biggest thing you did during the day was play wiffle ball or play football, and because everybody just had fun. And once the sun went down, everybody went home, and the next day, same thing. You just do the same thing. And plus, you always went swimming in the summer. Well, of course, you always went swimming in the summer because, the stream was right there. Nobody would give you a hard time. I mean, you could go wherever you wanted and go swimming, and that's what we did. I mean, so the whole time I was growing up down here, that's what it was all about. It was just having fun with all the kids and swimming and playing the sports and doing your thing.
Now, tell me about, I think the first house you bought. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah,
Which house that was?
The first house I bought, Carlos Raver owned it, and it was a mess. I mean, it was just a total mess. It probably, in a lot of people's mind, should have been tore down. It isn't that the fact that I wanted the house that bad, but it was the only thing that I could afford. And Carlos helped me out with that. We went in, had a whole bunch of friends, and tore it apart, redid it, made it livable, and lived in the house for 17 years or 16, 17 years. And to the day I moved out, I was still remodeling it the day I left. I mean, I worked on the house all the time. I mean, whatever I did, I would go back as I learned and would redo it, and just continuously redid the house. And then when I finally had it to where I thought it was right and I was happy, family got too big. It was time to move on, and that's why we moved.
I think you told me a story once about buying your first hammer. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, I didn't even own a hammer. I didn't even own a hammer when I bought the house. And yeah, I remember going, because I had to go up to an old lumber store up in Westminster, and I bought my first hammer. And everything else that I had, we borrowed, because, well, like I said, I didn't have no money either. So we had to, we did whatever we had to do, and we did it.
But you weren't particularly trained in the area of really reconstruction, were you?
Nope, didn't know nothing. Never, didn't know nothing about any of that. I was a painter. I was a painter, and that's how I had gotten into the whole field of learning anything to do with construction. And then just one step led to another step, and still learning today. And
now you're very much into wood, right?
Yep, love wood, love framing. I just love the whole thing part, the whole part of of building anything. You're building it, I'm interested. So
can you tell us a little bit about the renovation and what all was involved, what you actually did?
Everything.
You built an addition. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, it had an addition on it. It was kind of looked like a deck. So we tore all that off, dug a foundation, put up block walls, and built a new addition. The old part of the house, actually, I guess the only thing that we had left was the main steps. Didn't really see no reason to move the steps.
Are you talking about the 2847, or are you talking about this house?
No, talking about up there,
Okay.
or down there. The steps is the only thing that is original in that house, because I never moved them. Like I say, we never just didn't see no purpose to, and we moved the basements, the basement doors, everything like that we had moved, but the main steps that were going in, we liked it. I mean, that's just how it was, and that's just how the old houses down here were, and the steps are still there today.
So did you leave the framing in place, or did you take the framing down, or just...
Only thing that stayed the same was the exterior walls.
Oh, okay.
Exterior walls, they're original. They never touched them. Tore everything off of them. Tore everything off of it, rewired it, re-insulated it, replumbed it, everything like that. But no, anything that's original is basically the steps.
Okay, good. And then you decided to build another house.
Yep. Yeah, like I say, the family got bigger. We had to do something. So we come up here and bought this property. Really didn't plan on tearing this whole house down. But once we had got into it, and like I say, we got to know more about woodworking, and what was left of the house we couldn't use, and we really didn't want to do that, but we didn't have an option. And this house was built out of logs. We just we didn't have a start point to it, and so then we just made the decision to take it down. And we're still using the foundation of it. There's actually right behind me, the main wall that's behind me is still sitting on the original foundation. And the wall to my left, more than 3/4 of that wall is the original foundation. So I used what I could.
Can you remember any of your most vivid memories in Patapsco? Anything that really stands out in your mind? Any incidents that happened that were somewhat unusual, or anything in particular that comes to mind?
Well, I was young, very young, but the flood was devastated the town. I mean,
in what way?
There was two floods. There was two floods here since I've been around. The first one, I really don't have the memories of it because I wasn't here, seeing all the pictures. But the second flood, the second flood, I was here, and it just it wiped out. It wiped out the town. It wiped out the bridges. People, you couldn't get in or out of here. I mean, your only way out was up past the junkyard, and that's a long ways around to get out that way. But that was the only way that you could get out.
So what area? How far up did the water come? I mean, up to what buildings did it sort of?
Well, the whole whistle stop. The whistle stop had water in the first floor. I mean, the whole basement was underwater, and it got water in the first floor. As far as the other houses that were down there, I don't think anybody really got damaged up on their first floor, but all the basements were flooded, and then downstream there was a house and a garage and stuff like that got totally wiped out. And it just did a lot. It did a lot to the town.
How did people cope with that?
Well, like I say, everybody was family, and so everybody just helps out everybody else, and that's one.
So
I guess it's yeah. I mean, it's the reason why I'm still here, because it's so close knit of a town that that people, if one person was in trouble, the whole town would help that person, and if it was kind of like in the old days of a barn raising. I mean, if you were building something, well, the whole neighborhood helped you build it. I mean, and it's just the way it was. And like I said, I guess that's why I'm still here, because I don't have no reason to move.
And there was an old mill down here.
Yeah.
Tell us about the old mill?
Well, the old mill. Of course, I never seen it run, but it was a nice house. Of course, they made it from a mill, and then people had lived in it.
Do you know what kind of a mill it was? Was it a flour mill?
It's a good question, because I've never really actually heard what it actually did. When you talk to people, everybody says it was a mill. Okay, but what was it? I don't know. You ask some of the older people that's around here, maybe they'll know that, but whether or not it was, like I say, a flour mill or a whiskey mill, I really don't know.
And what happened to the mill?
It had burnt. It caught fire, and the fire didn't destroy the house completely. I mean, it was pretty bad. It was burned up pretty bad. It could have been salvageable, but the house, well, the property had two houses to it, and so when Carlos bought it, well, the one house was burned out, and the other one needed a lot of work. Well, he just took the best of the two, and picked one house and remodeled it, and the other house just sat there, and over time, since the fire, the windows were busted out of it. It was abandoned, and then it just got weather beaten, and then it got to the point where I guess it was getting dangerously for anybody to be around it, so they elected to just go ahead and tear it down.
Was anyone in the house when it caught fire?
No, she was in a nursing home. She was old, but.
Do you remember her name?
Yeah, I do. I can't remember it right offhand.
It wasn't Elizabeth Shamer, was it?
Nah, that don't sound right.
Was it a Shamer?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't know. I thought there was another name to it too, but I can't remember it. I can't remember it.
Has Patapsco, the area, changed much over the years since you've lived here?
No, town hasn't changed at all. Yeah.
So who are the main families that have always lived here? Can you tell me their names?
The main families would be the Davisons and I guess the Shamers. They were the.
In the barracks?
Well, no, like I say, you could keep on going and naming. I mean, it was the Knights were here. The Knights were here. The Greens were here. The Davisons, and the Shamers.
The Greens, did you say?
Yeah, they.
I don't know that.
Yeah, they lived right down there because actually the Greens used to owned a store. So yeah, they were a big part of it. Like I said, that's going back beyond me. So
I
I
don't
don't.
see, there's not many greens left around here now, are
Not that I know. That I know of. There's no greens down here at all.
there?
None at all. Every name that I've mentioned other than the greens are still here.
Now, your wife Sandy, her maiden name was McCormick,
Hmm.
but was her mother from here, or was it her father that was from here?
Her mother was from here.
And what was her mother's maiden name? Was she a knight, or
No, she was McCormick.
she was?
Yeah, she was a McCormick. Yeah.
No, I mean her mother's maiden name.
Yeah, her maiden name was McCormick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so Sandy's last name. What was Sandy's maiden name? Your wife.
McCormick.
Okay, well, you didn't get.
Yeah,
Sandy's mother wouldn't have been a McCormick.
Yeah, they were.
McCormick and a McCormick got married.
No, they didn't get married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't get married.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's fine. And I'm with you now. Okay, can you remember any sort of interesting stories about anything happening down here, or anything about the wildlife down here that you might recall? Anything unusual?
Uh,
Somebody told us about a big snake that used to be in the area.
well, there's always been snakes down here. As far as anything being big or huge or anything like that, no. Yeah, I don't remember.
It's the odd deer and the
Yeah,
odd fox.
it would be a bobcat every now and then you would hear, but I'd personally never ever seen a bobcat. You would hear them, just up and down the railroad tracks. They were somewhere, but I never seen one, but you would hear them. But that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah.
So what was Christmas like around here? I mean, what did people do for Christmas?
Probably pretty neat because that was probably the one day where everybody kept to herself. It was, I guess you could call it, that was a family day. I mean, and so you just pretty much stayed in your house.
Yeah.
The Christmas Eve, it would be a little different, because that was, like I said, a lot of the people down here celebrated Christmas, Christmas Eve. And that would be the day when everybody would go house to house and, stuff like that. But then Christmas Day, no, it was kind of left alone. You were,
Can you tell me about the going to house? What was that like? I mean, what did people do?
just you would not, you would just, I don't know, you'd go around and every house you went to, somebody either give you a beer or give you a shot or something, and that's just how they did it, because everybody was, like I say, everybody was related somehow to the other.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't go there to spend all day. You just went in there and I guess you'd wish each other, Merry Christmas, and they'd give you a beer or a shot and you'd go to the next house.
Is that still going on now? I mean, do people
No,
do that?
no,
Not
you
so
don't.
much?
You don't see that too much no more. Well, you really don't. Now, if anything, you might have a party at one place, and so everybody might just gather. Like my house might be picked next year, and if it is, well, that's good, and then you'll have your friends over, and actually you'll exchange your gifts that night, and then Christmas Day is basically the same. That's family day, done. So you won't see nobody.
What about like Halloween or anything like that? Do kids go trick or treating around here or not?
Yeah, it kind of got out of hand. It got out of hand, and that's why trick or treating's not as big as what it once was. Because we would, like I say, it used to be anybody that come to your house you knew. Then it got out of hand because it was so easy for people to come here and just park. They would park their car along the road and just unload a whole truckload of kids and go house to house just to get your candy. And when all that happened, or when all that started happening, and that's when you started seeing people just start turning out their porch lights because it just got out of hand. I mean, and because you all pretty much knew who was going to come to your house, and every year it got bigger, and it got bigger by people that you didn't even know. So then that's pretty much put an end to all that.
So can you tell me the names of your children? And I understand you have a grandchild.
Yep, I got 3 boys, Alan, Danny, and Daryl. good boys. And Alan recently got married, and now I'm a grandfather.
What's
So,
the grandbaby's name?
Cameron.
Cameron?
Yep.
Little girl?
Little girl. Cameron, I don't even, that's a shame I can't remember her middle name. But that's Cameron Tawney. And next week she'll be 1 year old.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
yep.
So what's her birthday? Actually, May something.
Yeah, well, whatever next Saturday's date is.
Okay. 20 something. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. And are there any, if you were to have one special memory or anything in particular that maybe stands out that you'd really like to relate to people, what would that be about Patapsco? Or anything you'd really like to say in particular about it?
Well, living here, just living here, and in the earlier days, we would all gather around in the middle of the road, and you would always go down that way. Actually, we would go to Brian Davison's house, and you didn't have a whole bunch of traffic, and you could go down there, and we would sit on his banister and drink beer, have fun, do whatever we wanted to do. And every car that rode by, you knew. So they would either pull over, and have a beer with you and go on, or they might pull off to the side and all right, well, they would join the party. And we didn't do it all the time, but we would to do that on a Friday or a Saturday night. It was you don't go nowhere else and do that, but that's just the way it was down here, and nobody bothered you because everybody was related, and we didn't bother nobody either, and by the time the end of the night was over, half the people that were in town were at the party. So, and that's priceless. I mean, like I say, you can't do that no more. I don't even know where you could even go to even think about doing that. But,
so, do you ever plan on leaving Patapsco, moving someplace else?
Yeah, we had. Well, I love the ocean. I guess my ultimate goal is one day, to live beside the ocean. But if I was ever to sell this house anytime soon, I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't leave Carroll County. I wouldn't leave Patapsco. I might try to buy some property that's right up on the hills or something like that. But to leave the immediate area, no, not right away. No, I can't see that. So I'm gonna be here a long time.